Oxymoron, a figure of speech in which apparently contradictory terms appear in conjunction. You've heard plenty of oxymorons before. Old news, deafening silence, awfully good. But here's one I'm betting you haven't heard. Electric Lotus SUV. Two of these words are typically attached to large, heavy, comfort-focused vehicles, while the third represents the exact opposite: lightness, agility, tactility, handling. So what on earth do you get when you smush those three words together? Well, you get this. This is the new Lotus Eletre, and this is fully charged.
Farnborough, Amsterdam, San Diego, Sydney, the #1 festival for clean energy and electric vehicles is coming to you. Whether it's fully charged live in Europe, supported by Mobility Service, or fully charged live UK, supported by LV, we cannot wait to see you there.
Well, well, indeed well. Look what we have here, ladies and gentlemen. This is quite a car, isn't it? Before we begin, a little bit of backstory, as we often do. What I want you to understand about this thing behind me is that this is no compliance vehicle. Yes, SUVs are on trend at the moment. Yes, many sports and supercar brands have pandered to that trend and done one. But this is not Lotus building an SUV through gritted teeth so it can raise some quick cash and make some more sports cars. The CEO of Lotus Group describes this new car as the backbone of the new Lotus lineup. It's actually the first of 3 lifestyle EVs that we're going to be seeing from Lotus in the next 4 years. You see, under the guidance of Chinese car-making giant Geely, the same Geely that is responsible for the resurgence of Volvo and the inception of Polestar, Lotus fancies itself as becoming more than a sports car brand. They want to sell all sorts of different cars and they want to sell lots of EVs, and this is the first step towards that goal. Of course, they want to do all of that while maintaining their brand ideals of lightness, handling, driver involvement. And I know what you're thinking, 5-meter long SUV doesn't exactly scream driver's car, but just reserve judgment until you've had a look around this thing, because it's fairly remarkable. Now, before we spend the entire video just prodding and poking around this thing and seeing all the cool stuff that it does, let's just eat our vegetables and get the facts, the figures out of the way first. First of all, don't call it an SUV, it's a SPUV, that's Sports Performance Utility Vehicle, basically a supercar on stilts. That's what Lotus are calling it. It sits on Lotus's new bespoke EV platform, the same platform that is going to underpin the other 2 lifestyle EVs that we're going to see from Lotus in the next couple of years. There'll be 3 versions available ultimately. Power starts at 600 horsepower, 0 to 60 miles an hour in under 3 seconds, top speed 161 miles per hour. That's where the range starts. All models will have a 100 kilowatt hour battery, estimated range WLTP up to 350 miles, probably a bit optimistic, but that's the estimated WLTP. The car is fully equipped for proper self-driving. I'll show you where all the sensors are hidden in a second. Price, we don't have an exact figure yet, but it's going to start at less than 100 grand, which frankly is less than I thought it was going to be, having had a prod around it. Weight, we don't know that number yet. Obviously weight is kind of a big deal for Lotus. It's fair to assume that it starts with a 2 and ends with a tonnes, because look at the size of the thing. But what you'll see around this car is that there's been a pedantic attention to detail to save weight wherever possible. Anyway, let's have a nose around it. So, exterior of the Lotus Eletre. We need to begin with the welcome sequence that it does when you unlock it, because it's really quite cool. A little theatre as you are approaching your car. These headlights can do different colours, incidentally, so they'll be able to show you your charge level when you're charging it. They'll be green when it's in self-driving mode, I believe, if you live somewhere where self-driving is legal. Very cool, I like that. Now the first thing that jumps out to me, looking around the design of the Eletre, is that it's full of holes, and this is Lotus's porosity design philosophy. As the great Colin Chapman once said, there's nothing lighter than a hole, and Lotus wants air to flow not just around and over this car, but through it, just like it does with the Evija. So there's a big hole here, there's a hole here, there. Air flows across the top of the car. Holes, more holes, holes in the back there. This car is like a 160 mile an hour sieve. Specific details then. At the front, very, very skinny headlights. Love the design of those. So much detail going on. Really strong leading edge here. Look how sharp that nose is. That's very Lotus Evija, if you ask me. And the Evija hypercar, incidentally, is kind of going to be the inspiration for the design language of all of these subsequent electric Loti. Down here, we've got some active ventilation. These pieces here open up in a really beautiful geometric way when the battery needs additional cooling. When it doesn't, they stay closed to keep your drag coefficient as low as possible for maximum range. Carbon fibre, absolutely everywhere. Everything that isn't carbon fibre is aluminium. Just because this is an SUV, it doesn't mean that Lotus aren't taking the whole weight saving thing extremely seriously, and you're going to see some more examples of that as we work our way around the car. Speaking of, come and have a look at the side. I'm going to walk to the end of the car now just to show you how big it is. Not a small car, 5.1 metres long, about 2.1 metres wide. Do you want to know something crazy? This is the first Lotus ever to have rear doors. It's the first Lotus ever to not be a small two-seater sports car. This is a complete revolution for the Lotus brand. Quite a steeply raked windscreen. That's quite supercar. Did you notice that? I like a steeply raked windscreen. Other things of note on the side here, well, there's a 23-inch wheel for you. 23-inch wheel with real carbon fibre inserts. You can have modest 21s if you like, but you can have 23s as well if you prefer. That's a big wheel. Don't curb it. Now this is quite interesting, camera wing mirrors. We've seen those before, but these ones are really clever in ways that I'll show you when we get inside. But it's also worth noting that there are 3 cameras on this camera. There's this one, which serves the camera wing mirror. There's this one, which I believe is for the 360-degree view of the car. And there's this one here, which serves the LiDAR system. Speaking of the LiDAR system, this car has the first ever set of deployable LiDAR sensors. You ready for this? One there, one on the forehead here, one around the back, one around the other side. Very, very cool. Lotus didn't want to hurt the aesthetics of the car with some cumbersome sensors, so they're tucked away until you need them. Quite like that. Just a quick word on all these holes we mentioned earlier. You can see it a bit more clearly now. Air enters just here, sweeps across the wheel, exits just behind the wheel. We've seen this before. We saw it on the EQXX when we featured that on the channel quite recently. It reduces the turbulence created by the spinning wheel, and it improves the drag coefficient of the car. This is my favourite one back here though. Air enters through a hole just here, which you can't really see, and then it exits through this vent in the back, which is very Evija. When you see this thing from the back, I've never seen an SUV where you can stare through a hole and see the tyre. That is so aggressive. Flush door handles, all the rage these days. These ones have got lights in. Ooh. Around the back, I think this is where you get the best sense of just how crazy this thing is. Again, the view through that hole of the wheel is pure racing car to me. And look at this split rear wing. This is carbon fibre. It feeds air along the rear deck of the car and then feeds it into a second wing here, which is adjustable. It's got 3 different positions depending on how fast you're going. There it goes. This, incidentally, this split wing design, this is a weight saving measure. You don't need the middle bit, so it's not there. Lotus claims that this car has the most advanced aero of any SUV ever built, which is a bit like having the best abs at the pie eating contest, but still pretty impressive. Last few bits worth picking up on. Beautiful rear light bar. Again, so much intricate detail when you get up close. We've managed to turn headlights and brake lights into a work of art with modern light technology. This is no exception. More carbon fibre, lots of carbon fibre. This comes as standard. You don't have to spec it. The whole car is made of carbon fibre and aluminium. Incidentally, cameraman Andy's just made an interesting point. This is where your number plate goes. It's carbon fibre. You're gonna have to drill holes in it to get your, I hope not. Boot, 400 litres at the back, not too bad, not enormous. I'm glad to hear there's a frunk as well, 77 litres in the front to store your cables. We love to see it. Welcome to the interior of the Lotus Eletre. This is quite unique, actually. I can honestly say I've never seen a car cabin that looks quite like this. And I think we'll start with the material choice because there's some really interesting stuff going on in here. Leaning on sustainable materials wherever possible. So this is a man-made microfiber, really soft, feels very nice, not dissimilar to Alcantara. On the seats here we have a wool blend which allegedly is about 50% lighter than leather. Now I do realise that in a gigantic SUV that sort of meticulous weight saving is a bit moot, but I like it. It's a nod to the brand's heritage and its philosophy. That makes nerds like me happy. And this is my favourite one. Up here we've got carbon fibre on the dash, but it's not carbon fibre as you know it. You can't see the weave that we're used to, and that's because this is actually made from all the cut-offs that are usually discarded when you're building carbon fibre components. They take all those cut-offs, they melt them down, they turn them into a resin, and that's what we have here with this beautiful marbled pattern. I think that's really innovative. Let's just talk a little bit about this layout because it is fascinating. First of all, high centre console, cockpit style feel. That's deliberate. This car sits on bespoke architecture. They could have had absolutely nothing here if they wanted, but in a sports car you kind of want to feel cocooned. It's part of the experience. I like this split dash design. This echoes that split rear wing at the back, and it's another kind of nod to the weight saving pass. We don't need that middle piece of dash, so it's not there. And would you look at these 2 tiny little gauge cluster screens? The passenger gets one as well as the driver. They're only 3 centimeters high and just show the most essential information. Everything else is served by this gigantic central touchscreen, which actually rotates towards you. Look at that. As you turn the car on. This is where you do the vast majority of your interaction with the car. Lotus claims that almost every function, 95% of the functions, can be accessed within 3 touches. Bare essentials on this little screen in front of you. And look at this steering wheel. On a Lotus, on a driver's car, the steering wheel is hugely important, and this is one of the most beautiful ones I've ever seen. These switches which control the cruise control and the stereo are just works of art. It's Bugatti-esque, as are these gorgeous aluminium paddles which will be used to control the regen strength. It's worth noting that it's all ornamental for the time being. This is a pre-production car. This is what it's going to look like. This is not a concept interior, but it's not a functional one just yet either. A couple things of note on the door over here. A beautiful speaker. Look at that. This sound system is provided by Kef. It's really fancy, and the design of it is super stripped down. Again, that philosophy of if we don't need it, it's not there. So they've removed all the non-essential components from that speaker. This is the screen for the camera wing mirror. A really cool feature about these is they brighten when you look at them and they dim when you're not looking at them to minimize distraction. There's a camera somewhere in here that's looking at my eyeballs. It knows when I look at the camera wing mirror to brighten the screen so that I can see what's behind me. When I'm not looking at it, it's dimmed. That's a safety feature. That's clever, clever design. Quite keen on this strip of light which runs across the cabin that can glow different colours and will be used to convey information to the driver, such as when you're receiving a phone call or changing your driving modes, it will change colour to convey that fact. We get a heads-up display with augmented reality functionality as standard. That's a lovely touch. I've really enjoyed that feature when I've used it on the EQS and the VW ID cars. This is quite fun as well. Look at these cup holders. They're flush, and then when you press on them, a little pressure sensor will detect the presence of coffee and it will lower down. And just some really interesting material choices. I like these textured buttons. I like this weavy pattern on the wireless phone charging port. It is exquisite. Right, the back of the Lotus Eletre, and the main headline is individual bucket seats. I would have been so excited as a child if I got my own bucket seat in the back of the family car. Now, if you want to be sensible, or you've made the mistake of having a third child, you can have a more conventional bench seat with that smaller middle seat that is available. Other things I'm noticing back here, let's see, we've got a little touchscreen which folds up just like so, wireless charging port underneath it. We've got another lovely glove box there, a couple of cup holders, beautiful switches. There are those lovely speakers again. This is nice. We've got another piece of that recycled carbon fibre that I was telling you about right here in the back of the seat. Up close, it's just gorgeous. I love this material that they've created. Obviously, because of the bespoke EV architecture, we've got a nice flat floor, so plenty of room for your feet. If you do have that middle seat, the middle occupant will be reasonably comfortable too. Impressive amount of headroom, I'm noticing. Despite that sweeping roofline, I'm quite tall, as I may have mentioned, I think once or twice in videos, but I'd be really quite happy back here on long drives. In fact, I think the back seats in general would be a really lovely experience in this car. It should be quite comfortable as well, because you get air suspension as standard on this car, and then some of the more performance focused options include active dampers, rear wheel steering, torque vectoring with an electronic limited slip differential if you really want to get properly supercar with your SUV. As for driving modes, there are 4 of them to choose from: range, tour, sport and off-road. Shall we take this thing off-roading? Thoughts on the Lotus Eletre then? Well, I know this much. This car is going to generate opinions. Everyone is going to have something to say about this thing, and I'm sure it's not all going to be positive. I get it. Seeing principles of lightness and dynamism applied to a gigantic SUV is a bit strange. A 2-ton Lotus SUV is a bit strange, but here's my take. If cars like this guarantee the future of Lotus, a glorious British brand, then I'm okay with it. And more to the point, we're still not that good at making EVs drive really well. We're still figuring out how to do that. Who better to help figure that whole thing out than the kings of handling themselves? If this thing even drives half like a Lotus, it is final proof that absolutely nothing is impossible when it comes to electric cars. So there we go, the Lotus Eletre. Can't wait to drive it. Unfortunately, it's not going to be that soon. Maybe tail end of this year, maybe early next year. I am counting the days. Please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have been, thank you for watching.
So if you enjoyed that episode with Jack, and who doesn't enjoy an episode with Jack? Everyone enjoys an episode with Jack. It's all here. Jack's really good. Jack's great. Jack's brilliant. Anyway, there's another episode down here with Jack, but there's one here with me, and that is the Patreon link, and up there you can subscribe to the Fully Charged Show. Well, if you enjoyed that episode with Jack, and how does he get in those cars? Because honestly, he is still growing to this day. Anyway, there's another episode with Jack there. There's a brilliant episode there, one of our latest. Up there, you can subscribe to Fully Charged, and that is our Patreon link.